Welcome to the Therapist to Millions podcast with Dr. Susan Spicer and Damien Mark Smith, where we interview all kinds of therapists to see what makes them tick as they share their breakthroughs, their most interesting cases and their biggest challenges, and what's working in the world of mental health today. Hello and welcome to the Therapist to Millions podcast, where we get into and under the skin of therapists and coaches, find out what makes them tick, and also find out some interesting cases that they might have come across in their time. Today, we welcome from the United Kingdom, which is timely, Sally Heady, who has previously worked as a solicitor. Funnily enough, Sally started her own practice in 2015 as a cognitive hypnotherapist and a coach, seeing clients in person in Manchester and online. And she now liberates professionals, business owners, and creatives who feel stuck or unhappy at work. And she helps her clients let go of anxiety and imposter syndrome. Oh, believe you me, all the entrepreneurs I've ever worked with, they all have that. So they can confidently create a working life they love. And she also delivers wellbeing and mindset workshops to the NHS and SMEs to equip their people with more confidence and work satisfaction. So, Sally, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Lovely to be here.
Pleasure. So tell us a little bit about, well, first of all, how did you make the transition from being a solicitor in therapy?
Yes, so quite early on in my legal career, by the end of my training contract, which is the initial 2-year period that you undertake, the penny dropped that law wasn't for me in the long term. And prior to my starting my legal career, I'd had quite a bad bout of anxiety, which was a lot better by that point. But I think after that episode, and also working in an environment like a city law firm, I witnessed a lot of mental health issues. I saw a lot of people who were burnt out and anxious, who were victims of their own conscientiousness. And so I always had this fascination with what keeps people well, what keeps people resilient. And so I started exploring different therapeutic modalities that I'd like to retrain in. And then fast forward a couple of years, I transitioned to a more interesting line of work in the legal career, and I was able to retrain part-time as a cognitive hypnotherapist. So I trained on the weekends and I kept going on with my legal job. And then I was very fortunate that they allowed me to transition to a job share as a solicitor. So I was able to do part-time therapy and coaching, part-time lawyering. And then I eventually transitioned to full-time being a therapist once I had my little boy.
Wow.
2016.
So yeah. I bet some of your first clients were actually in the law firm, weren't they?
Yeah.
Practicing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sure, like a lot of people when they start out, it was a lot of colleagues and friends just practicing on as many people as I could. So yeah, and I think there was I think still in that world, that legal world, mental health issues, I think things have improved, but I think a lot of people were very interested, and it almost gave them permission to open up about what they were struggling with, because I was very open that I wanted to explore this line of work. So yeah.
That's wonderful. And so what's, using hypotheticals, what is been your biggest success story as a therapist?
I will use a different name, but one of my biggest success stories would be, let's call her Laura. And when she came to me, she was working in a high level role in a corporate organization, and she was extremely burnt out. She was very, very anxious, and she was finding it very hard to stay calm. She was feeling really confused about her life's direction, and she was often in a state of overwhelm. She felt like she couldn't trust her own decision making, that she was just surrounded by a lot of noise, and she knew she didn't want to stay where she was. But she just found it so hard to listen to herself and to connect with what she really wanted. There was a lot of conflicting feelings, because she was just overwhelmed with the voices of well-meaning friends, colleagues, senior people who were giving her advice, but she was unable to connect with what she wanted. And so during our time together, we did the deeper work of looking at what was driving her patterns of anxiety, of ruminating, of feelings of panic. She was having the occasional panic attack, getting her to a much calmer baseline day to day. And so she was having more peace of mind. Her mind had quietened down. And then once she was in a better place, I draw on positive psychology quite a lot in the work that I do. So it was about helping her also to just reconnect with the kinds of things that made her feel more like her. Like, she loved exercise, she loved sketching and being creative. Those were her strengths, and those were the things that energized her. And at that point, she wasn't making time for any of that. So once we got her to a baseline of functioning much more, calmly, thinking clearly, it was about how she could make her feel more like herself again. And from that point, she changed roles to another company where she had a far better work-life balance, where the culture was much more aligned to what she wanted. We also looked at what was most important to her, because there was definitely a misalignment in terms of the culture of where she was working and the things that were most important to her. And it was funny. She also had an interest in coaching and went on to do a coaching course. She's not a coach now, but it was just something, it just sparked her curiosity. And it was really nice to witness, because it was just her exploring things and trying things out, and not having an attachment of, I have to know how this is going to pan out. I need to know that I won't fail at this, or I need to know that I'll be successful. There was a much lighter, fun-loving side to her that emerged, and she was just so much more like herself. So that, for me, has been one of my biggest success stories, to see that transition happen.
That sounds fantastic. Now, what's been your biggest challenge, or dare I say it, failure? But crucially, what did you learn from it?
Okay. There was a client that I had, this was a few years ago, and thanks to my excellent training, this doesn't normally happen. So I was very frustrated that it had happened. But basically, with this client, she was overwhelmed with self-loathing, basically. And all throughout my training, the message is always, don't get sucked into the story. The story is just the story. It's never about the story. It's about what's driving the story, right? But there was just something about her that meant I kept getting sucked into the story. She was incredibly intelligent, very, very self-aware. And with most clients that I've worked with who have problems with self-esteem and self-belief, 99% of them have a dominating part of them that struggles with self-worth and, am I worthy? Am I good enough? But most people have even the teeniest, tiniest seed of, oh no, but maybe I am worth something. But she was just so vested in keeping her pattern, and she was very clear on the benefits of, my self-loathing means that I behave properly and I'm not going to embarrass myself. And if I kind of loosen my grip on that, that will mean that I will embarrass myself, that I'll let others down. She had made this equivalence about what her problem would mean, and there was just too much to risk in letting it go. And so, on reflection, I probably should have just brought brought our therapeutic relationship to a close earlier. But I found myself getting caught up with that part of her, almost having an argument, trying to rationalize that part of her that wanted to keep her problem. Whereas I know that the far more constructive thing to do was just immediately go to a level deeper, rather than try to use rational arguments with this part that wanted to cling on to self-loathing, because these patterns are often not rational and logical, and the whole the perspective that I always bring to my work is, these are unconscious drivers and stories. So I got sucked into her story.
And do you think that's helped you going forward with cases since then?
Yes, absolutely. It was a really good reminder of the importance of not getting sucked into the story, and to honor what they're saying, but to just move things in a different direction, because that's what she wanted me to kind of lock horns with her, and it was my job to actually take a step back and take us in a different direction. So yeah, it was a really good learning for me.
Nice. And if different from either of the above, what's been your most fascinating, interesting, or unusual case, and why?
I think one of the most interesting clients I ever had was a guy who came to me. He was lacking in confidence, and he didn't make eye contact. This was in person, and he didn't make eye contact with me through any of the first 3 sessions. Wow. And this was in the early days too, so I suppose I was questioning, do we have the rapport here? Is he engaged in what we're doing? And it just shows, you must never mind read, because then very, very rapidly he just walked in. There tends to be a point in sessions where something clicks, or the cumulative change that we've worked on, everything seems to come together all at once. Mm-hmm. And it was about session maybe 4 or 5 where he walked into the room and was just engaging with me in a completely different way. It was just so striking, because it's quite a difficult thing to have a one-on-one session in person when the person is not making zero eye contact with you whatsoever. Really? Yeah, and it was a sort of side-along glance occasionally, and then there was this really quick turnaround, which was lovely to see. And yeah, that might not sound so strange or unusual, but it made a big impression on me, and that was also a learning around keeping the confidence and belief in your client that however things may seem outwardly, I was doubting whether he was engaged or present, and it was hard to read it. It was difficult to read him engage where he was, that actually he was really vested in the process.
Would you like to grow your practice but don't know where to start? We're now giving away Therapists to Millions for free. Correct. You can learn how to write a best-selling book, how to get yourself a TEDx talk, how to use PLR products, how to set up a podcast, and lots more, and it's all completely free. Head over to therapisttomillions.com and sign up now. Now, your practice has been going since 2015. So what has been your most successful marketing technique to grow your practice?
I think in terms of attracting clients that I feel are really, that we've been the best fit, the best marketing strategies has been networking and word of mouth and referral. So I have a practice in Manchester, and yes, I do see clients online, but I have found when that connection has come through someone that I know, or someone has met me face to face, that has attracted clients that have been a better fit. And then otherwise, I've concentrated on high quality content marketing, so blogging. I like writing and doing in-depth blogs, and that has been good for search engine optimization. I mean, search engine optimization on my website has really helped in terms of people searching locally for a therapist or coach. But I don't know necessarily when people find me simply off the back of a Google search, it's been more hit and miss in terms of whether those clients have been the best fit for me. But my advice to anyone, perhaps if you're in the beginning of your practice or you're reaching a plateau in growing your practice, is just to pick one or two things and don't get sucked into the vortex of social media, because you don't own your content on social media.
This is a very good point.
Yeah.
So, Sally, if you could write a book, what would the title be and why?
It would be called Liberate Freedom from Imposter Syndrome, because that is the title of my forthcoming course, which I will be delivering in October. So I suppose that's the easy answer, that I would take that course that I'm delivering. It's full of practical tools and techniques on how to dial down the volume on the inner critic and that part of you that is screaming, I'm a fraud, who am I to be here? And to grow that part of you that believes in yourself, believes, yes, I can do this, I can be brave, and even in the face of failure, actually, I'm okay and I can keep moving forward. Or the alternative, I was reflecting on this, would be something like a title that's, it starts with you, something that I always come back with in my work. Something that I always come back to in my work is this realization that, it always starts with your relationship with yourself. Whether it's fear of flying or imposter syndrome or anxiety. So it starts with you, a practical guide to self-love and self-acceptance, something like that.
I love that. And in the beginning, I've got a lot of entrepreneurs who would love that course. So you have to let us know when that's available.
Yes. Well, it's starting, doors close on the 3rd of October. So yes.
Excellent. So on the subject of books, what's been the best therapy book you've ever read and why?
On a practical level, my favorite therapy book is The Question is the Answer by Trevor Sylvester. Trevor Sylvester did train me, and I think he is one of the most talented people I've ever come across, who can translate complicated concepts and distill them in a form that is really easy to understand and digest. And the wonderful thing about The Question is the Answer is that there's just so many elegant tools and questions that you can use with clients to basically cut through resistance. To cut through resistance in a way where you are still honoring your client, and you're not like what happened with me and the client, where we started knocking heads, to go a step deeper, to dig deeper into underneath the initial I don't knows, or those answers that you're perhaps not convinced by, or if you suspect the client is avoiding the issue. It's full of lovely prompts to just elegantly draw out more in a way that feels safe and honoring.
I love that. That's great. That's being added to our library of books, which we're building up nicely.
Wonderful.
What's your best non-therapy book and why?
Is this fiction, or is it personal development?
Absolutely
or
anything can be
anything. So this is really hard because I did my English degree. So I did my degree in English literature. So I'm a big consumer of fiction. I think one of my favorite books I've ever read is actually Roddy Doyle, The Snapper, so Irish novelist.
Okay.
So I love accents, and I'm really fascinated by dialects. And his books are all written in this kind of Irish vernacular, and lots of like it's really witty, really funny, really easy read. I actually read it. I was probably far too young when I read it, and a lot of it went over my head, because it's about, you know, a young girl that gets accidentally pregnant, and she's telling her family in this like very, it's full of coarse language. If you're not a fan of swearing, don't read it, but it's really fun, interesting
Don't
read.
read it to the kids at night.
No, no, not one for the kids. No.
Okay, and what's your top tip for mental health in the world right now?
It's really, really basic, but it is simply to give yourself permission to rest, to take time out and to pause. In my practice, I still see so many people who, yes, may have patterns of anxiety and stress that can be helped therapeutically, certainly. But more often than not, I see people who, if they just allow themselves to take a step back to to do say 2 minutes of slow breathing every day, to actually switch their phone off and have time and space to themselves. So often when I'm particularly on the more coaching side of things, when people feel overwhelmed and they don't know what direction to go in, and they feel like they're completely lost, so often it's just that foundational part that's missing. They're just really tired. And it's that simple. They're tired, their nervous system is jangled, and their mind is racing. And when you're in that activated fight or flight state 24/7, it is very hard to connect with the higher values of what you want your life to be about the things that energize you, that inspire you. Instead, you can just get caught in this treadmill of action and busyness that is not particularly meaningful. And meaning and purpose is so important for mental health. So
that's great.
Simply to rest and to prioritize sleep as well, just to start with the basics.
Excellent. Right, it's competition time.
Okay.
So tell us a fact that blows our mind, or tell us a joke that's one of a kind. To win the Therapist to Millions exclusive t-shirt, I actually have them here. We actually have
wow.
them. So there you go. This is for anyone on the live on the YouTube channel. You're actually going to be winning one of those. So there we go.
Gorgeous.
That's what's going to be winging its way to your door. If you can tell us a fact that blows our mind, or a joke that's one of a kind.
So I've kind of shot myself in the foot here by picking a fact that I'm not even confident of the pronunciation, but I'm just going to risk it. So this actually came to me from a colleague, because I didn't know what fact to say, and she taught me about this concept, which is, okay, let's give it a go. Fetal microchimerism. That may not be correct, but it is this phenomena that before a baby is born, a baby releases cells into the mother's body, and those cells stay within the mother's body for decades and help keep the mother well. And so that baby gives this gift of additional cells to its mother to keep her well. And some people think that that's even the reason why women live slightly longer than men, is that they have the benefit of these cells given to them by their babies, which I just think is amazing.
That is incredible. Well, that has definitely blown our minds. So an exclusive t-shirt is winging its way to you. Congratulations.
Awesome. Even if I got the name wrong.
That's brilliant. I never knew that. That's amazing.
No.
And finally, Sally, how can people contact or get hold of you?
The easiest way is via my website, which is sallyheady.co.uk. I'm also on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Sally Heady. That's the benefit of the unusual name. LinkedIn, Instagram as well. I am Sally Heady Coaching. And for one-to-one work, I offer a free 45-minute conversation, a clarity call, for people who want to explore working together. And for anyone who is interested in the imposter syndrome course, it's sallyheady.co.uk/imposter syndrome. So
fantastic. We'll put all of those details and links into the show notes. And Sally, thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your cases and your marketing, your practice experience with us. It's been really fascinating, and what an amazing fact as well. I think that's my favorite fact so far, I have to say.
So cool.
And I love the book too, by the way. I love that book.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, it is excellent. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
Really
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.